Eu tenho fome de cidadania.
Eu tenho fome de ajudar.
Eu tenho fome de fazer a diferença.
Eu tenho fome de levar esperança.
Eu tenho fome de inclusão.
Cook with me.
O Mesa Brasil Sesc RJ agradece a todos que colaboram para que essa receita
Mesa Brasil Sesc RJ thanks everybody who daily contributes to our most important ingredient, which is solidarity.
Eu tenho fome de tomate. Eu tenho fome de feijão.
O Mesa Brasil Sesc RJ é uma rede alimentar com fome.
This is a food chain against waste and against hunger. And the recipe is very simple. We want to promote better quality of life for people everywhere. This is an amazing humanitarian network for everybody.
Levando de quem pode doar para quem precisa receber.
We are very proud, and I'm very proud because I know about the positive impact it brings to our lives and to other people's lives as well.
O que eu faço traz um impacto muito positivo sobre vidas, né? Um trabalho muito gratificante em saber que vai chegar um alimento sobre a mesa daquele que necessita, daquele que precisa.
The work starts with donations that are given to Mesa Brasil.
O trabalho começa com a ajuda de doadores e empresas parceiras, que repassam ao Mesa Brasil
They may still be consumed, and that's the goal, to avoid waste, to redistribute. And even though they are not commercial anymore, they cannot be sold, but those items can still be consumed. So they strengthen society once we are dealing with these strength of our goals. So that's the aim, that's the purpose of the initiative.
Através do Mesa Brasil, e isso nos apoia, dando mais força a um dos nossos propósitos, que é cuidar de pessoas.
So there's gratitude involved because we have been working the land and we've been helping people.
É um sentimento de gratidão.
And we are avoiding waste. You know, we are not talking about garbage. We are talking about good enough food that can still be consumed.
A gente está falando de um alimento bom que não foi colhido.
So it's really a great joy to be part of this. We have a quality control selection, and the food is forward to different institutions. To deal with food is a very important part of the way. They are carefully submitted. They will be prepared, carefully prepared to be consumed.
Muito importante.
On
the
other
que eles são cuidadosamente separados, que eles vão chegar devidamente adequados para o consumo. Até porque quando a gente faz essa, o que a gente chama de manipulação, a gente verifica se o alimento está próprio para consumo. Então a gente faz um trabalho sério. E eu tenho a certeza que ele vai chegar à mesa como ele tem que chegar.
The next step is the distribution for social institutions such as kindergarten, schools and asylums, and we need to reduce the insecurity, the food insecurity, and that's part of our initiative.
Para quem precisa, reduzindo assim a condição de insegurança alimentar de crianças,
save money by using those items that come from the project. And sometimes before we had deficit, we couldn't feed everybody. And for instance, we lacked tables for children to study or to do things. And we managed to buy some toys because, you know, the money, instead of going to the food, we were able to take action in a different direction. And to become even better, good practice, hygiene good practice are also involved.
E para temperar ainda melhor essa iniciativa, o Mesa Brasil Sesc RJ leva também ações que promovem as boas práticas de higiene, o combate ao desperdício e o aproveitamento integral dos alimentos, estimulando assim a criatividade na elaboração de receitas e cardápios de baixo custo.
That's
São
a way
cursos,
also of being
oficinas e
proactive
palestras
in which it
que
adds
multiplicam o
up to
conhecimento,
some
capacitam os profissionais das
projects
instituições
regarding the
atendidas
income of
e ainda ajudam a
our
complementar a renda
members.
dessas pessoas.
The teamwork is helping
Esse
us
movimento integrado ajuda a
solve the
tirar milhares de
hunger problem.
brasileiros
You
da
know, people
situação
are
de
hungry and
vulnerabilidade
we are
todos
trying
os
to do
anos.
it.
Um trabalho de equipe que
I
ajuda a
am
acabar
hungry
com
for
muitas fomes,
helping
como
people.
a de
I'm
inclusão,
hungry
cidadania
for
e
you,
desenvolvimento
for
social.
hope. I'm hungry for inclusion,
Eu tenho fome de
social
cidadania.
inclusion.
Eu tenho
Mesa
fome de
Brasil,
ajudar.
Sesc
Eu tenho fome de fazer a
RJ. We
diferença.
thank
Eu tenho fome de levar
everybody who is
esperança.
part of this
Eu tenho fome
cooperation
de
project
inclusão.
on a daily basis.
O Mesa
Solidarity is
Brasil
our
Sesc
most
RJ
important
agradece a
ingredient.
todos que colaboram para que essa receita seja um sucesso diariamente. Juntos, adicionamos o nosso ingrediente mais importante, a
I
solidariedade.
welcome everybody to our international forum, Mesa Brasil. We are here since it started yesterday. This is the final stage. And there were some wonderful conversations that took place here. We are looking for some reflections about hunger, waste, social challenges. And if you were not able to attend yesterday or today in the morning, they are available in our channel. And once we finish here, you can binge on the other presentations, the other conferences and debates. And before I introduce you to our last panel, I'd like to remind you of something new. We are about to launch the book, Mesa Brasil Sesc book. And it will be bringing us delicious recipes and with spiced recipes with different touches. And it will be available online as of the 16th of October, and we all will be able to devour the book for free. And it's right next door. So you'll be able to download the book and to try the recipes at home. This is a huge opportunity. And now let's start our last panel that I'm going to introduce you to now. To be part of the last panel, I'm going to invite Mrs. Regina Pinho. She's the director of SESC, the executive direction of Ação Cidadania, Mr. Kiko, and also a representative from Latin America, Alfredo Castoff, besides the CDC Professor Hilda Lopes Rodrigues. Professor, the floor is yours. And there is something I'm curious about. What does it mean, CBCISS? I still don't know. The acronym, your mic is muted, so thank you, Karen, for your kind presentation. First of all, I'd like to tell you that this is a moment of joy for me to be here with this so important forum, Sesc Brasil. And it's the topic is really very important, and not because of its academic value, but because of what it means for human lives' dignity. We are going to be discussing waste and food loss, and something that make us really worried about in such a moment like the moment we are going through. So we have a wonderful technological world now, and you can do this virtually. So I will try and clarify. It's the Brazilian Center of Cooperation and Exchange of Social Services. People who belong to the social academia, they probably know what does it mean. It's an NGO. And we are a non-profit organization
It was created in 1946. So we go back a long way. You know, it's the same age as Sesc. So we are partners, long-time partners in a way. That's why I'm so honored to be here, because this international meeting is promoted by our most valuable international partner, which is SESC. I'm a social assistant. I work in this area of expertise, and besides being the director of PUC, the Catholic University, I'm very much connected to the issues we are going to be dealing with, to ethics in research, and all themes that are related to it. So, Brazilian Center for Cooperation and Exchange of Social Services. This is our institution. And now that we have clarified that, let's go get right into our theme. We are carrying out now the last moments of this very timely meeting, because we are still facing the pandemic, and we are going through this feeling, this sensation that vaccination is not going far enough or fast enough as we would have liked it to go. And the pandemic has shown us in all details the situation, the terrible situation we are going through. So that's why with all the inequalities we face in our daily life, and now we have to start moving, or to go on moving, and to carry out actions and to present reflections that might take us somewhere else, to a different world than the one we are currently living in. And that's why it's so important to be here discussing this. And it's especially symbolic because the panel is putting together organizations known as NGOs. So they are non-profit organizations, and they show us how important it is to be working jointly so that we can understand the social reality involved here, and also to try and find new ways so that the social reality could be shown in under a different light. So we aim to share the light. And the organizations that are here and that were invited, they have a very significant history. And not only in Brazil, not only locally, but also they have an international trajectory. So we can see how important it is to act in a joint manner. So it was very good to know, or to have been here, and at the end, reach the end of the seminar, the end of the forum, with this perception that the most important thing we might say is that we have to act together. Not only the third sector, the one that's quite well represented here by our institutions, but also it's important to be in touch, to establish a dialogue with the other institutions, with the other sectors, civil society, besides civil society, the public sector, you know, the government sectors, the government entities. They have a huge social responsibility about the topics we are dealing with, and they must be held accountable in the face of the people of their nations. And then our sector would be this link that will help articulating ideas. So the three parts of this, the three pillars, I should say, they are the sectors, and they complement each other because they identify their common goals, and together we are going to shed the light on what needs to be done. And why? We have to think about what it means to be hungry while there is so much food waste elsewhere. So we have to think of new possibilities, of new ways of being in this world. So, having done this introduction, I'm going to pass the floor to our speakers. And we are going to listen to our executive director. This name, this program, this organization is something that I hold dear, and it's very important in Brazil because of its trajectory of fighting against hunger since for a long time now, since Betinho. But I want Kiko Afonso himself to tell us about it. I'm just giving you some hints because, history is always a fundamental part of better understanding each other. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kiko. His parents were politicians and they were born in exile. He is known as Kiko Afonso. It's the first time I can see him through the screens, but he's a pretty well-known person in our circles. He is the executive director of Ação Cidadania, which is an NGO, a Brazilian NGO. And in 1983, there was this eclosion of the national movement against hunger. And this institution has been helping people since that point in time. And now, in the executive direction, Kiko is there. He has acted in different entities. He has taken part of different projects. For instance, he was part of the IBASE, the Brazilian Institute founded by Betinho himself as well. We can never let go of our origins. We must always take them into account. He was also part of a provider, a technology provider, and also he was part of the information network for the third sector with other partnerships that he was creating along the way. So he's been in different sectors. He has been working in private sector. He has been focusing on technology and innovation. So we now are living in a technological world, and we have to be using it in our favor and in the favor of the most vulnerable ones, so that we can meet each other in this search for a better and fairer world. So, and also the entity is a nonprofit one focusing on advocating and disseminating public policies for startups. So, Kiko, I'll pass the floor to you, and you're going to tell us about it. You tell us what you think is fundamental to our complex issues that are very close to our heart.
Thank you, Hilda. Thank you very much for your words of introduction. Thank you for the invitation, Regina, and thank you to Sesc, Mesa Brasil, everyone there. We have a great partnership and it dates back. It really is a great joy to be here. To talk here in this forum. It's important to say that Ação da Cidadania isn't as old as Hilda's institution, establishment. We were founded by Betinho de Souza. He created the greatest campaign against hunger in Latin America. This campaign mobilized the private sector public policies, and did transform what we and brought about what we have today in terms of food security. So Betinho's activities right back then in 1983 and beyond helped keep this struggle alive. Now, besides having worked in this establishment, I am the son of one of the founders of IBASE with Betinho, Carlos Afonso, my father, Carlos Arruda at the time. And so I really had very close links to Betinho. He was nearly like family, and also great links with IBASE and Ação da Cidadania. Ever since I was a teenager, I saw its founding, and by stroke of fate, in the past 8 years, I went back through a sinuous path to Ação da Cidadania and taking up the role of executive director. I am extremely honored to have this role with the son, Betinho's son, who is president of the board, a chairman of the board. And this is the legacy of our parents, this struggle against hunger, against extreme poverty, trying to help people as much as possible in Brazil. For those people who don't know us, Ação da Cidadania is really focused on food security. We have a wider scope than that even. We work in the field of human rights and citizen rights, different actions, but we are known essentially as an establishment that fights against hunger. Since 1983 to this date, we have helped nearly 40 million Brazilians to receive food. Only just in the COVID times, we helped nearly 15 million Brazilians to receive food in all the states in Brazil. Mesa knows how difficult it is, and not just to raise funds, but also to distribute food. But this work is very important and so necessary at this time, in these times. I'd like to talk about why we're here, talking about hunger and why we have reached this point. We must forget that hunger was caused by COVID. We hear this a lot in our talks, debate, and even in the media, that COVID brought hunger. This, unfortunately, regrettably, this isn't true. COVID just sped up a process that was already expanding. Just to place us, as Ilda said very rightly, I think it's important to situate people in terms of the context we're living in. Brazil in 2014, after 2 decades of improvement, social improvement, since the Fernando Henrique government all the way to the Dilma government, we see an improvement in social conditions for the most needy in Brazil. All these social indicators really improved significantly. And in 2014, we had left the UN hunger map in 2013 before receiving this great prize by being removed from the hunger map. We were recognized by the UNDP as a country that most reduced hunger and extreme poverty. We were a reference, a benchmark to other countries. Our partners in the WFP were an institutional partner of WFP Brazil. They would tell us all the time there that Brazil is the focal point. The WFP office would help to bring delegations to Brazil to see what was being done. So this would be taken to other countries, to poor countries, and they would be able to deploy the policies that we were undertaking here. It really seems as if it was a century ago, not just 7 years ago. Now, these policies removed a population the size of the French population from extreme poverty, but we really have gone down again. There's been a huge drop. It's very, very difficult to build policies to solve social problems. And in 2016, 2 years after Brazil was removed from the hunger map, Ação da Cidadania started receiving information from its committees across Brazil that the committees didn't need support in terms of citizenship, educational programs. They needed food again. And this really was stark, because we'd only been removed from the hunger map 2 years before. And for Ação da Cidadania, it had been a time when we wanted to think about what other actions we needed to take. We were preparing a second stage. We had a population that was overcoming hunger, and we were now moving to a second stage where we could deal with actions and projects that were for a population that did not face hunger in general. The figures were stark. When we look at 2014, Brazil had 54 million people that were facing some degree of food insecurity, but 4.5 million were facing hunger, in fact. The number is still high, but it did mean that we were not on the hunger map, because to be on the UN hunger map, you need to have over 5% of your population facing serious food insecurity. Brazil had 4.5 in a population of 190-200 million, and this actually removed us from the map. We would need to have 10 million to be on the UN hunger map. In 2018, and the Statistics Organization published a report, but in fact, the report was only published in 2020, but the report was done in 2018, and we saw whether in 2018 these statistics were taken, but in 2020 we saw what was happening in 2018. So we had 20 million people more facing hunger or food insecurity in 4 years later, from 2014 to 2018. So we had so there were 10 million people facing hunger. So we were really on the edge of being on the UN hunger map again. After 2018, things carried on worsening. We saw things across Brazil. We saw there was a worsening in 2019, and to make matters worse, as if it weren't enough, we had COVID in 2020. COVID came to speed up an inevitable process. We might not have had the same figures in 2020, but in 2022 we would have had, because the figures were getting a lot worse. And regrettably, the latest governments have destroyed public policies that actually managed to maintain a certain blanket of food security for these populations. So you have some examples. The freezing of Bolsa Família since 2017. In 2020, we had food inflation of over 30%. So people who live on staple products, who buy basic products and live thanks to the Bolsa Família, had a drop in their purchasing power that amounted to 30% in 2020. So beyond the income transfer issue having been neglected, we had 2 million people queuing for the Bolsa Família program. Now, we also have to focus on the food security policies. The Food Security Council was cancelled by this government. This council used to focus on food policies. We were also affected by a completely different view in terms of this government's views on public policies. So today, the main small producers of food acquisition were simply reduced drastically in terms of the amount of food being acquired. Now, this created a problem for the person who is not receiving as much food as they should have, but also the producer, because many of the producers survived thanks to selling to these relief programs. And these producers started not having enough for their sustenance. These past few years have been focused on agribusiness. When we look at the agribusiness and the dollar at 5 or 6 reais at certain times, agribusiness produces food for export, not for the internal market. So we have a drop in food production in Brazil in terms of offering food that Brazilians consume, which means that we have to import food. Brazil being one of the major producers of food, we have to import basic foods in order to fight against or to struggle against the offer that we have in Brazil. The scenario shows us a great drop and downturn. I don't know if everyone knows, but we, with the Brazilian Bar Association, we brought a legal action. I don't know if you know, but in our Brazilian constitution, since 2010, we have the right to food as a basic precept for all Brazilians. Now, if we look at all these downturns in terms of public policies, the lack of support in the Bolsa Familia and relief packages, we understand that this basic precept of providing food or having, of the Brazilian population having food, we brought a legal action, and we understand that the Supreme Court Judge Toffoli has already asked the government to answer about what public policies are being taken in terms of fighting hunger in Brazil, so that we can receive an answer in 10 days, and this can come to be judged in the next in 10 days time, and we can then see if the government can deploy or actually enforce these public policies to fight against hunger. Food Network, Sesc Brasil, Mesa Brasil, everybody who acts in distributing food. Well, this is the reality that we face. A country that has so much of its population facing food insecurity and that cannot see conditions for improvement in the short term. Our efforts are really Herculean. I'm sure Regina feels the same as I do. It seems that we're not getting anywhere. We distribute food and we distribute tens of thousands of tons in the past years, and this hasn't addressed not even a thousandth of what we need to do to distribute food to this population. If we were to just address the lowest part of the population in terms of the ones the most basic needs, we would still have a very, very hard time. We wouldn't be able to have enough of a budget to address the demand. The federal government has to address this need. It has the funds and it needs to go into this problem in depth. In the meantime, we are trying to put out the flames. We will have our campaign, Christmas Without Hunger, very soon. This is a campaign that we do yearly. We always receive the support of Sesc or from Sesc Mesa Brasil. And Betinho used to say, talk about forest fires. There was a huge forest fire. All the animals were running away because of the fire. They didn't want to die. And a tiger goes past and looks and sees a small bird taking a drop of water and putting it trying to put out the fire. And the tiger says, "You're not going to be able to put out the flames on your own." And the bird turns around and says, "No, of course, on my own I won't. But at least I'm doing my share." So I think that is our role, each of us here, each of the institutions that have been acting with Herculean strength. well, Mesa Brasil, and we are working non-stop since last Christmas. We never stop distributing food and raising funds. And many of the efforts that we have undertaken are thanks to Mesa Brasil. And we have daily meals that are distributed, over 1,000 with the day, thanks to Mesa Brasil. We have joint actions such as Brazil Sem Fome, Brazil Without Hunger, Christmas Without Hunger. And it is I'm extremely honored to be here, Regina, talking to you, because it's what Ilda says. Our activities cannot be undertaken we can't do them on our own. We're all these birds acting together institutionally, personally, giving up certain things in our day-to-day, in our lives, so that we can act in a significant way at such a difficult time. We at least sleep more at peace, knowing that we are doing everything in our means to try and improve conditions for these families that we saw so sadly yesterday, taking food in terrible conditions. It really is very, very saddening, but I'm sure we're going to get there. We're going to be able to turn things around. We're going to celebrate, and Betinho up there is cheering for us. Now, I know I perhaps won't be on my time, but I think it's important to place everything in a context. You didn't speak over you too much. You said what you had to say, and you spoke of your work and your institution's work, and this is so important. The social reality that you showed, you reflected, is serious. It's hard to bear, but at the same time, we see how an institution, an NGO, can look towards the future and through its actions, not just by distributing food or the road to food security, but also in reestablishing people's rights. And this is essential. So this joint action, and while you're together with people who are facing hunger, your presence is there, you're taking food, you're with these people, but also in a search to reestablish the rights of that population and each individual. In these fora, we always talk about major problems, that's huge challenges, but we need to see that these are major challenges involving a lot of people, but each of those people is an individual, an elderly person, a young person, a child. These people require a movement and somebody and people who are sensitive, and they need people acting together. We need to create a public space for people to act together. Thank you very much, Kiko, for your words. Now we're going to continue, and we're going to have the talk by somebody who is from Latin America as well, and he is going to talk about not just from a national point of view, but an international point of view. We have the pleasure to be able to introduce our friend Alfredo Kasdorf. I was going to ask Alfredo Kasdorf to introduce himself, in fact, because there was a slight hitch and we didn't have his biography or bio sent to us. But you'll be able to talk about Global Food Network and what it is doing in Latin America. Thank you very much, Alfredo.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. I really would like to thank you guys for inviting me to such an important event, and also I'm going to apologize on behalf of Ana Catarina that should be here today, but you know, as it is common to happen in these pandemics, sometimes things happen and there are some
problems that we have to deal with in an urgent manner. So that's why I'm here replacing her, and I like to say hi to people from different regions, from Brazil that are here today connected with us. And we could also say hi using the chat so that we know where we all come from. And my idea, as I mentioned before, is to tell you about what's the GFM, the global network of food bank. I live in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I'm a part of the Latin American team of our global institution. And Paula, Maria, they help us in the team as well. We are 4 people in our Latin American team. I started as part of the Argentinian arm. And I was part of the direction, and then we got together in 2014. I started to work for GFM in Latin America. There is a very important, it was a very important step for us for this project of food assistance. And I helped developing projects in Latin America. We are 4 people working in this global network. So it's a long story, it's a short story as well. And I'd like to share with you the fact that we are very happy with our global food bank network. So, 15 years ago, we founded the network, and the mission is to help mitigating hunger and also to strengthen the existing food banks so that they work better and they achieve more and they reach more people. And the second situation for satisfaction is that to the awareness, the losses, and the food waste that we are dealing with in such a constant manner when there's so many people in need. So it's important to reflect on that. And that's why we also would like to celebrate the event and the date, because this is our public memo. This is what we want to achieve. We want to reduce waste. We aim to take that food to people in need, to vulnerable populations. That's the goal, and that's why I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. And as I mentioned, our mission has to do with bringing food to people using the food banks and taking that to developing regions. And there are 4 perspectives we are dealing with. We want to escalate the existing food banks, to distribute more food everywhere using the global networks, to accelerate the action using more contacts, rural companies, people who develop such our beneficiaries to achieve what we think is important. So we have to face very difficult situations all the time. So, and we have to use such standards so that we can go on with good levels of our standards. They should be higher. And we must be focusing always on food security as well when we work with these food banks. So currently in the world, there are over 45 countries that are part of this global network all over the world. In 2019, we were working on that project, and then there was this broadening of our expectations. So we have a broadened reach, and we are really very proud of how much we have achieved, and we are proud to have widened our reach as well. Brazil is one of our main partners in the regions, and we are very thankful because those partnerships are being taken care of. In Latin America, we are 17 countries involved, and I'm talking from Mexico to Chile. So there are 17 countries and 19 members, because there are some countries which have more than one food bank per country. So we have 24 food banks in Colombia, for instance. And besides that, as I've said before, we add up to 100 and almost 200 food banks throughout Latin America. And Latin America is very important to our global network. We represent a great part of the global banks. That's the region in which we have a wider coverage, and we're very proud of that too. 30% of the food that we distribute globally is in Latin America, and we meet the needs of most of the people here in Latin America. So this is how important it is, how important we are for the region, you know. Unfortunately, we face great needs. You don't need to hear that again, but Latin America is one of the most affected regions by the pandemic, by extreme poverty, by economical crisis, you know, because the crisis was there before the pandemic, so things got worse. And that's why it's so important to do this, not only because we are the bigger team, but because we know most of the people we need to help are there as well. So we have to help people more. So the pandemic changed things. And there's a new way of doing things. There are restrictions to be met and to be overcome. So we know that all of a sudden children could not go to school, they could not eat at school, lots of different institutions and entities. Especialmente los bancos de alimentos que están en el frente tuvieron que buscar distintas y nuevas formas de cómo poder llegar a esas personas que lo necesitaban, de cómo poder encontrar nuevas formas de circular, generar permisos extras, cómo poder seguir y no perder esa cadena de alimentos que parecía que se perdía. So, because it seemed that they lost things. Y acá quiero felicitar enormemente. And that's why I'd like to congratulate every food bank and also to congratulate FoodBank because of the difficult circumstances we have to deal with. So we aim to deliver.
tanto de kilos entregados como de personas atendidas, fue mucho mayor, más del 100%, 160%, 150%.
Because 150%, there was a huge growth. There were different campaigns going on, and there is action with this. There was lots of action carried out by the NGO Ação e Cidadania. So besides the pandemic, there are difficult situations, and to try and help people who are affected by the huge chaos that the pandemic brought to us. So that's part of our job. You know, when we started, we had to do this. How do you change? I will tell you about how things changed for us when it started, or before the pandemic, which we used to travel everywhere. We had meetings everywhere. And then all of a sudden, we had to stop it. And for 2 or 3 months, we had monthly meetings. And actually, I correct myself, the meetings, for instance, how we are going to meet the demands or the needs of so many groups. So they were horrible days, very fierce days. And that's something that we had to deal with. And that had to do with the technology as well. How can we share? How can we share everything we are dealing with? So other allies of ours helped us with that, so that we could not only buy food and basic baskets and so on, but also to strengthen our operations, because all of a sudden we cannot circulate, we had no volunteers, we had to look for new ways of doing things, and we had to distribute food. So lots of resources in new ideas, and lots of innovation had to be put in place immediately. And that's one of the biggest challenges we had to overcome. And something else we learned, how to articulate our efforts, because we do understand we cannot work by ourselves. So we do that with different organizations. We have to ally, we have to partner with different companies. And how can we do that? That's the learned lessons learned, which we have to approve, and we have to improve and perfection ourselves. And thanks to that, in 2020 in Latin America, we could distribute 365 billion of tons of food, and also hygiene products as well, different elements. And they do that very well. Over 12 million, so almost 12 million everywhere. This was 300 times more than what we did on the year before. So you see, the numbers are huge. So the 157% more people. So for us who work on such NGOs, those numbers are really very difficult to be dealing with. We have also managed our teams, and we have replaced volunteers, and we have done that on a normal basis.
Junto con aliados, a poder trabajar en campañas en conjunto, cómo poder acceder a lugares remotos, lugares que antes no teníamos, que era muy difícil. Entonces, ¿por qué digo todo esto? Porque sinceramente, ¿y por qué la importancia de trabajar aliados como Mesa Brasil? Porque son ahí donde nosotros podemos llevar y realmente atender a estas personas que hoy lo están pasando muy mal, en donde la pandemia resaltó, hizo visible un problema mucho más grave del que ya era, y desde ahí la importancia de ser nosotros muy profesionales, también muy transparentes, con mucha trazabilidad, poder distribuir todos aquellos elementos, porque muchas empresas confiaron y requirieron de organizaciones como nosotros poder generar esa ayuda que todo el mundo lo necesitaba. Así que creo que esto es básicamente lo que quería compartirles con ustedes, de por qué todo nuestro trabajo, por qué la importancia de tener aliados como ustedes, dónde llegamos, compartirles también que un 50% de las organizaciones, de los bancos de alimentos están liderados por mujeres. ¿Por qué lo resaltamos? Porque creo que, no solo porque es importante y queremos resaltarlo, las mujeres también fueron una de las grandes afectadas en esta pandemia. Personas que no solamente tenían que cubrir su casa, sino también tenían que cubrir su trabajo que ya lo llevaban adelante, lo pudieron hacer de una forma excepcional, generando grandes esfuerzos.
Take care of the work and the house at the same time. So that's something we have to highlight every time. It's very important to do that. What else can I tell you? And I think we should be participating. And they are with us. They are, you can please share our webpage so that you can check on it. And then I'd like to congratulate you all for this huge work. We are very proud of you. And we do trust you are going to do that. So I'm open for questions, and I'd like to congratulate you all on this task, this current task.
Estás en silencio, Hilda. Eso es algo que también hemos aprendido en la pandemia.
Sempre acontece. Mas chegamos lá, com a ajuda do outro, né? Mas foi uma exposição que nos deu uma informação importante.
You gave us some important information. You told us about your day-to-day and how you face the problems that arose. And this was taken as a learning, lessons and there were lessons that have to do also with the difference between countries. Each country has a culture, specificities, and to work with all of this teaches us so much. It's incredible to see how we can act together on a common mission, respecting specificities of each culture, of each country, each peoples. I think this really provides essential lessons, and this is a testimonial that you'll be able to share and other actions. Food banks are really essential at this time when we need to create organizations that are able to organize, distribute, and receive. And so the food banks are really great institutions for this work. We have heard two partners, one who gave us an international approach, and we also had Ação Cidadania with the national overview. I think it would be important to reflect on what other actions we have had. We've had other examples. Kiko talked about actions undertaken at the social welfare actions or social actions at the political level. What other actions are embedded in this other work? Educational, cultural actions. What other things are done when now we are reacting in terms of hunger for food, lives are at stake? So what other actions are embedded in this work that are part of this work that is so significant, meaningful? I would like each of you to provide us with an answer. I think this would be a good start to the dialogue. Who'd like to start? Regina, would you like to start?
A gente tinha combinado que ela falaria depois, mas eu disse que ela está sempre com a possibilidade de falar. Mas ela vai depois encerrar, mas ela tem sempre a palavra aberta.
Claro. É uma felicidade, né? Eu estou aqui com amigos queridos.
Hello, dear friends. Hilda. CBCISS, born in 1946 together with Sesc. It's such a difficult time after the Second World War. It's complicated. We think that what was complicated back then is complicated now. Alfredo, I also listened to Kiko, and you mentioned Betinho, and any sociologist who knew Betinho, who heard about the bird, and people would talk about paternalism, and people would say, he would say, I have to save people from death. So when you mentioned Betinho, we sociologists really knew him well, but I'm going to talk about Sesc and when I wrap up the session, but I would like to say that hunger kills, as Betinho said. But hunger kills. We don't have time to educate and undertake other important actions. We need to save physical lives. Sesc works with Mesa Brasil. Or rather, I'm going to talk about this, but works with education in Brazil, works in changing eating habits in Brazil, and through formal and informal education. Formal education is very important, but just formal education is not enough to overcome or to address all the needs. We work through culture, and Mesa Brasil, everything linked to Sesc, which is a social service. Kiko knows us well because he's a brother of ours, and Hilda does as well. So it's a social service, and we have a mission in promoting social well-being, and social well-being, social welfare encompasses everything. Today, we're fighting against hunger, have a focus on this because it is essential. We need to talk about this. We are calling people to action all together. Nobody does anything on their own. The more we are, the quicker we will reach our aim. The doing away with hunger, and Mesa Brasil can become something else and not fight against hunger, because it does seem that we're not getting far. All those tons and tons of food that we distribute, we didn't stop. Alfredo, you're right. In the pandemic, we never stopped, but the pandemic really made hunger even more visible, which is a side of extreme poverty. This brings great sadness. Now, we are strong. We are strong peoples. We work against hunger and food waste, many of us, but we have culture as well and arts. We work on nutrition for those people who are not below who are below poverty line, and we have many educational, cultural actions because we need this refreshing inspiration through arts. We closed our theaters because of the pandemic, but we didn't stop working in art. We've discovered new technologies, and we can now be far away physically, but together. And we did a lot through art, technology, in terms of citizenship, education with the elderly, youth and children, and so on. Thank you very much, Regina. Regina, I didn't tell people about your bio. I know many people know you, but it's always good to introduce people. So Regina Pinho. Regina Pinho has a doctorate in tourism, leisure and culture, and she has a degree from the University of Coimbra in Portugal. She's a sociologist, she's already told us. She has a degree from the University of Ceará. She comes from Ceará and she's here with us now. She has an MBA in social management at the University of Getúlio Vargas in Rio de Janeiro. She is a specialist in leadership management in the first years of childhood, and she has a degree in this field from Harvard. She is responsible for the general coordination of the International Sesc Colloquium, FEC Ceará. She has been she worked for Sesc Ceará for over 30 years. She was regional director since 2006, but present is regional director for Sesc in Rio de Janeiro, that is sponsoring this forum. She is a member of the Academy of Letters of the Ceará municipalities. She never forgets where she's from, Ceará. Since 2010, she sits on seat 6 in the Academy, and she is part of the Galeno University Academy. She works incessantly. It's always good to say some words of introduction and a bio, although you've already told us how you work. And we thank you, Regina, for answering the question that I asked to everybody. Now I'm waiting for Kiko and Alfredo. Alfredo, would you like to start?
Creo que yo tenía pensado, y gracias Regina por tu participación, así me ayudaste a ordenar las ideas. Pero si resumo en todos los aprendizajes y cosas nuevas que tuvimos, en general voy a poner 3. En general, los bancos de alimentos somos especialistas en recuperar alimentos recolectados, de lo que no se puede vender. Lo que pasó en esta pandemia es que tuvimos que comprar alimentos. Para muchos bancos, casi el 80% de los bancos, fue la primera vez que compraron alimentos. De todos los alimentos que distribuimos, de los 360, fue solo y casi un 13% de lo que fue comprado. Pero eso es muchísimo. Y los bancos hicieron un ejercicio muy grande y muy bueno de poder comprar alimentos.
So you know that in an emergency to buy food is not that easy. We had to buy food in the pandemic. Sometimes food isn't available, there isn't enough stock. So this was a great challenge. The second thing was technology. We had to learn to communicate in a different way. We realized that in this new normal, we only travel for very specific causes, not just to talk, because we've learned to talk in a different way. When we see each other, we're going to hug, because we've actually talked more than if we'd been in normal times. In this new normal, we don't hug each other anymore. We just touch each other's hands. And we learned to innovate as well. We learned to understand how to relate to people in different ways and generate something that can really help people who most need it. depending on the needs of each person, we learn to innovate a lot, to see how we can address requirements in different ways. So the great challenge is how we do things after the pandemic. Well, the pandemic is perhaps is subsiding, but we do see people that are left in a situation of great needs. So we really need to address this and see how we can help these people. Thank you very much, Regina. It was good to hear you. I think we have a great challenge ahead beyond distributing food, which is what is done in emergency. You mentioned Betinho, and when he said, let's distribute food, and when the sociologists and the left-wing people looked at him and said, you're crazy, this is just paternalism, and he then said something that is so talked about now. People who are hungry are in a hurry. This phrase really is an answer to people who say, well, it's no good just giving food. We need to improve education, health. Well, we all know that. We know that we're not solving the problem by just giving people a basket of food. But while we cannot solve the problem, all the problems, we really have to look at what is most urgent. We've worked with different organizations, and we've focused a lot on our advocacy work, not just in terms of trying to fight for the rights of Brazilians who are not cannot bring a legal action in the Supreme Court like we do, but we need to think of how we can train the leaders and give them information so that they can act in their municipalities, in their areas, so that they can try and change public policies and create public policies where they are. I don't know if you know this, Regina, but we launched at the last year for the municipal elections, the Betinho Agenda. It's a document that we created with 40 public policies being proposed for food security. Some things are already in the legislation, and other things are really referring to proposals in terms of good practices so that the local governments can use them. And we were surprised because we realized that many town governments, local governments, would come to us and say, I didn't even know that I was supposed to do this, and I didn't know how to do this, and I wanted to deploy this program, but I didn't know how. So part of the process has to do with training people in government and also civil society leaders in terms of their rights and how to work together with the state. We need to help develop these policies and to train leaders across the country. This is what we've done. We have trained hundreds of community leaders in Brazil online, and we also have a course on food security based on the Betinho agenda. This is the 5th group. We're going to have 250 leaders being trained just in this first round that we're undertaking now. And the idea is to broaden this. And this is just a pilot stage. It really has been very enriching for us to see what's happening on the ground and to understand how things are different in each region of the country. So we are being enriched with this, and besides the public policies, advocacies, and distributing food baskets, it's important to support the leadership in producing. Alfredo, sometimes we go into a community and people are facing hunger, and they live in a house with a huge yard. They don't know that lettuces can grow from the ground. I know it sounds surreal, but unfortunately, because of the lack of access to education, lack of knowledge, this means that families end up starving because they don't know how to plant food in their backyard, and this could save their lives. So we've acted to try and train. We have a lot of yards where production is taking place now. We're being told by people that people are, thanks to what we've taught them, they are able to grow things in their yard and sell. So people's lives have been transformed in an incredible way. While activities have grown a lot in this food security chain as a whole, not just training people in terms of healthy eating and ways of eating in a healthier way, but also in terms of creating possibilities for people to survive thanks to what they plant, and supplying people around them with this food and collaborating in food production. So we are active, and we know together with Mesa that, well, there's a lot of information that we gain through you with thanks to what you do with small producers, by giving them support in their plantations, by bringing their food, taking their food that they would have lost. So we're trying to join forces and try and understand where we can come in, giving support to what you do, what other institutions work, and trying to make lives easier, especially for the smaller producers who have such hard lives, and they produce a great amount of food that we eat in Brazil. It's not agribusiness, but it's a small producer who is actually responsible. So we want to have society understand food security as a topic better. We want to train leaders across Brazil. We want to focus on advocacy, which is so important across the country, at the different levels, town, local government, and across the country. And we need to remember that people who go hungry are in a hurry. So a lot still needs to be done. And I would like to say that I'm happy to see that during this pandemic, some companies have now woken up to reality. They have started to understand that hunger is not just subsides with a single donation, 100 kilos of food, and that's it. People eat every day of the year. So I see many companies and partners with our program that they understand that they have to have a continuous project, that they need to understand that people eat daily. And we have managed to see companies that create departments, food security departments in their companies, especially companies who work in food production. And they now see the importance of not just having a single donation, making a single donation. This means that society can move forward and not just sideways or back, as we've seen in the past few years. When all actors see that we need to work together, we're all responsible. We're all responsible in facing this problem that we see, so we can join efforts and move forward. And I think that's what's most important right now.
Yes, we do love you guys, because you could share with us this broadening of the initiatives and how this an action that might look isolated. Of course, we have to be accountable for it, but also it carries other effects that we only identify later. And so that look of accountability, of being responsible for, and that is, it raises throughout society. It's a way of building awareness, you know, and you're making a call to other participants so that they take part of the processes, so that donation is not something invisible, something unimportant that they should be thankful for it. It's part, those crumbs, those beats, they are part of the solidarity movement, but it also is part of the social responsibility which is embedded in the fact of being a citizen. So, and also we must feel responsible and for our country, for our world, and we must be held accountable for all of that. It's not only about people, but it's also about the nature. There is a direct correlation amongst those elements. So we have this broader vision, the global vision, but that small gesture from one institution, if it becomes part of a complex articulation, it's not small anymore. So, and that's the idea, to be dealing with waste and hunger this way, because that would be respectful of nature itself. And when we are discussing productive backyards, they might be productive not only for that family you mentioned, but they could become entrepreneurs, but they should be productive because they will help in the well-being of nature. And that's something that we could put together. And that's how important this work is. And those partnerships, they face challenges that we have to adjust in order to overcome. And we are looking for healthy feeding, human dignity. So those partnerships, they are put together in this search for adding value for the human dignity. And we should be working in the interconnection, so to speak. And that's why we might feel responsible. It is huge responsibility over our shoulders, but it's also lots of hope. The movement, the changing movement is possible, and we establish links, and we will empower and enable people within this perspective of the common housing, of the common good, as we like to say. And also it related the significant partnerships that we have been able to share throughout this international forum. It was a huge achievement of the forum organization. And to avoid waste, to avoid losing food, in order to reinforce people everywhere, to enable people everywhere, and also to reinforce our partnerships, to empower, to reinforce public policies in order to tackle the situation we are going through. We had said that Regina, she's the director of the Sesc Rio de Janeiro, that she was going to finish, to offer us a synthesis of this forum. And by checking on the messages we've had, I think that's very provocative. I do believe that this will be responsible for huge movements that were challenged by the stories we have heard here today. That's part of the legacy we are going to leave behind. That's part of the takeaway message. And maybe there's 300 people listening to us, but now the world, before we used to have 300 people, but now the world is not ours because we recorded the panels. Repercussions are going to be lasting
for a while. So, and that will reach other people and other meetings. So I'd like to thank you for your presence here, to thank Kiko Afonso and for his speech as well, and his own story about Ação e Cidadania. I also like to thank Alfredo Kastorf, who came here and has brought us international views and international possible solutions. And also I'd like to thank Regina, who has given us the opportunity of being here today and to discuss such an important matter with such important people as well. So thank you very much, and I'll pass the floor to Regina so that she closes our session today. And besides, if somebody wants to say something, we could open the floor for comments. Yes, of course, we have open doors. Hilda, thank you very much. The SESC exists to be provocative, actually, to raise awareness. Kiko knows about it because he's been a long-time partnership over 2 decades, and Alfredo knows a little, and Hilda knows a lot about how we work, because we are partner institutions that are kind of brother and sister. So it has to do everything before we started considering or thinking about food, but we did not discuss hunger. But SESC was already considering feeding the workers in a proper manner, you know, because that was part of the process. So we were careful about that, about thinking about meetings, thinking about feeding people, thinking about bringing them good food. Because sometimes, you know, they did not have, the only meal they were having was the one at SESC. So now Mesa Brasil works all over our country. And besides the old sentence that we repeat from Betinho, you know, short sentences in a metaphorical sense, stronger one. So we take from where it's wasted to people who lack it. But that's not a food bank, you know, it's much more than that. We need to educate people, and that's how we do. Why people are wasting our donors? Many times they are wasting things that they should not. And they don't know what to do with that. But over 2 decades, we have changed the mindset of lots of businessmen, because they don't know how to do it, and we help them with the logistics. So we know it's not easy, but we have carried out projects and we work pretty well about logistics and about excess being brought to people who do not have enough. So, and Mesa Brasil works very well in this area. It's pretty common that they waste, they leave it on in the fridge, for instance, and then it becomes not suitable for consumption. So we focus strongly in preparing food for people who are going out for their school lunch, their packed lunch. We teach them how to do it in a better way, in the best way possible. So because sometimes there are things we didn't use, for instance, the peel of the fruits. So now we invest on that, and we had lots of help from the academia, from the universities. They are really very important. A while ago, we got tons of beans, and we were asking, what can we do with that? You know, so we learned new ways of using flour, of using beans. Because since the donations are the backbone of the project, sometimes there are tons of the same food. So they do teach us. They are well qualified, the nutritionists and people, the technical people who work with us. They they deal with the meals, and also they are dealing with enabling people, of empowering people, empowering the citizens, and we are on every municipality of Rio, so that they know their rights, the rights that are granted by the Constitution. And I think it didn't need to be in paper, because that's a basic right. How come we have to write it down because otherwise people won't understand it? We die without food, we die without sustenance, and we cannot have a critical citizen without food. So we have to form people with a critical skills. So there is a very good idea that came together with Mesa, and our president supports really our project, and then there is other Mesa do Campo. It's the rural area. It's the rural part of our initiative. There are small producers, and if their crops, they are small farmers, they are family farmers, and if their crop is too big, they lost it. They used to lose everything, but now they do differently, because there was a huge waste of 1/3 of the food being produced in a country like ours, which is very rich. We know that we are producing proteins, and they are everywhere, all over the world, and Brazilians are hungry. So that's another arm of Mesa Brasil, and that has been working wonders for the small producers, and we are fearless. And so now we have to end, but we are tireless, and we will be working on it. We that are here today, and people who were here yesterday, and lots of other people all over the world who are not here physically, but they represent the same ideals, institutions, people, NGOs, everybody who speak different languages. But sometimes they must look for a joint effort, because hunger is the strongest language ever spoken, So to die of hunger, can you imagine that? That's all over the globe. We should fight against it. We must go forward. We must work together to eradicate hunger. And that's the dream we have, And the ones, maybe we won't see it, but people who are born or who are going to be born, the future citizens, they will be seeing it, And we are social institutions, and we follow on this path. So, and I'm an enthusiast about social services, and about every institution that live on a daily struggle to improve people's quality of life, and people who are below the poverty line. So it's a very painful situation, and that really tears us apart and overwhelms us. So wherever I go, I see people, homeless people, hungry people everywhere. And sometimes I start to think, what could I do for these groups specifically? So we work and work, and we want to work more, and that's what we should do. But now it's time to say thank you, to thank Kiko, dear friend, a long-time partner, Alfredo. Thank you very much for being here and for bringing your ideas. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hilda, my dearest. And yes, I promise to be going soon to a in-person meeting. Karen, thank you very much. And now I'm going to read the list of people I need to thank for. First of all, our president, Antônio Queiroz, he's the one who has led us. He is our guide. And so, therefore, I have to thank him for that. Thank you for our Sesc team. You know, because I'm here, but on my side and behind the scenes, there are other people that are responsible for such an important dialogue behind the scenes, behind the cameras. People from Mesa Brasil, our team from Mesa Brasil, our team from Sesc Rio de Janeiro. And also working together with us to reflect upon such an important topics. Bia, I'd like to thank Bia as well, and everybody who has joined us, who have spent time here with us to listen to what we have to say, and also to raise issues and comments and questions. Suggestions. Thank you very much for your time. And our donors, our dear donors, we have different allies, different partners that send us thousands of tons of food. Our ambassadors and our president that has also made an effort of looking for new donations. So we had a very beautiful ceremony in which we put together 20 ambassadors. They represent us on each municipality, and now they are Mesa Brasil ambassadors. It's a very happy moment for us. Because, you know, we want to get more donations. So thank you very much, international and
national organizations. Thank you very much for having been with us, accepting our invitation, being with us here during these reflections and this dialogue that is so important. Now, thank you very much to all the panelists who were with us today and yesterday. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you that this was a space for a dialogue, and I think we made very good use of it. I feel like staying and listening to you and learning from you. We're here to learn from different reflections. We learn so much. And you think, well, I'm going to do this tomorrow, and I'm going to call Kiko and talk about this, and then there's Alfredo. So this urge to do things must be within each of us, each individual, to fight against hunger. It really is necessary to contribute towards people's well-being, towards the well-being of the whole planet. We're talking about Brazil here. We as Brazilians need to work for Brazil in every way, training, raising awareness, so that Brazilians can be thinking people who reflect on themselves, their rights, and where they are. Where we have the right to food. And so let's move forward. Big hug to each and every one of you. We're very, very happy to have been here together, and what will follow. We will carry on walking together. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Regina, and thank you very much to you all. And here we come to an end of our forum, and there are so many reflections. We have broadened our way of thinking and how we can fight against food waste and fighting towards a more democratic and fair society that is socially responsible. Thank you to all of you who took part. As Regina said, if you didn't have a chance to listen to one of the tables, look for the link, and the links will be available to one and each of every one of you. Take care and see you soon.
Eu tenho fome de cidadania.
Eu tenho fome de ajudar.
Eu tenho fome de fazer a diferença.
Eu tenho fome de levar esperança.
Eu tenho fome de inclusão.
Eu tenho fome de
O Mesa Brasil Sesc RJ agradece a todos que colaboram para que essa receita seja um sucesso diariamente. Juntos, adicionamos o nosso ingrediente mais importante, a solidariedade.
Tenho fome de brincar. Eu tenho fome de batata. Eu tenho fome de tomate. Eu tenho fome de feijão.